What is going on, guys? Welcome back, Chuck Nasty on Fantasy Football. We are going into week 4. For some of you guys, it is make or break. You cannot be 0-3 and go 0-4 and make the playoffs to end up making some money. It just doesn't happen. You need to win. So for those of you that need a little help at a couple positions, I'm going to go over some options to pick up on the waiver wire, which clears tomorrow morning, Wednesday morning, at 3 a.m. So we're going to go over quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs, and even a couple of tight ends for you. For those of you that don't know, every week on Tuesday nights, I drop the waiver watch, which is players to pick up this week that could help separate you from you and your buddies, take you to that next level, and get a chance at potentially bringing home a ship, making some money. And then on Wednesdays, we release the start and sit-ems for your roster for the week, players that are going against bad matchups or players that have great matchups, and you're wondering who to play. If you have any questions at any point, make sure you drop them down in the comments below. I always try to respond back. If there's anything I can do to help you, if you'd rather, you want to know which player I should play or who you should sit this week or what defense I should play over one another, drop them in the comments. I'll be happy to help you out. Let's jump right into it. So, week 4. We saw some pretty impressive performances by none other than the Daniel Jones. Another pretty impressive performance by Kyle Allen. These are young quarterbacks that it's their first experience in the NFL. But let's go into it. Daniel Jones, 14% owned on Yahoo. And 23 for 36, 336 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and then a 2-point conversion and 2 rushing touchdowns. Are you kidding me? I hope some of you guys started Daniel Jones this week. For some reason, I just had a special feeling after watching him in the preseason. I understand it's preseason, but he's been throwing really, really well. And in the next couple weeks, he gets back Golden Tate off of suspension as well, which gives him yet another high-volume target that can bail him out of tough situations. So look for him on the waiver this week. You're probably going to have to put in a waiver to add him. It is unlikely that he's going to be available in free agency tomorrow morning, but you never know. It just depends on how savvy your league is. Second to Daniel Jones, Jacoby Brissett. Now, I had money on the Falcons this week, and I'm a little pissed that I didn't cover, but he completed his first 16 passes, right? 310-yard, 2-touchdown kind of day. I'll take that all day. But the best part about Jacoby Brissett is he doesn't throw interceptions. He's got some pretty sweet matchups that are coming up next. Raiders, Chiefs, and Texans all have pretty vulnerable secondaries. So look for him to pick a couple of these guys apart. I definitely like them over the Raiders this week. Not a bad pickup if you're in need of a quarterback. Now, there's a couple of other options on here. These aren't all great options. I'm not suggesting that you drop, a medium end quarterback like a Kyler Murray, or I'm not suggesting you drop like Jared Goff and you go pick up one of these guys. But if you had Big Ben, or you had Drew Brees, or you, for some reason, drafted Nick Foles as your quarterback, or maybe you have Cam, these are all potential options for you. So in addition, I'm going to say it, but I'm not going to like it, but I have to say it. Case Keenum is 15% owned on leagues as well. He did not play well on Monday night, but you got to remember, he was playing against a really, really vicious Bears defense. So it's not like he was slated to have a great game and didn't have one. It was like, how bad is this going to be, was what it looked like going into this. So still a viable option if you absolutely need somebody, but like I said, he's one of the lower tier guys. The Sex Pistol himself, Gardner Minshew, still available on a lot of waiver wires. If you're in a 2-quarterback league, go grab one of these guys, stash them on your bench. If you need to use them, by all means, you're set, or to cover a bye week or something like that. But Gardner Minshew, okay, he had pretty consistent numbers this week. He threw for over 200 plus yards in both of his starts, 5 touchdowns and 1 pick. I mean, that for a guy that's sitting on the waiver, that's not bad at all. So definitely recommend going to pick him up. Or another potential option for you, Mason Rudolph, 13% owned on Yahoo. He threw 2 touchdowns, but the only problem was he was throwing a lot of check down balls. He has apparently a ton of problems throwing the ball further than the line of scrimmage, or he doesn't feel comfortable doing it, or maybe the Steelers coaches are not allowing him to throw further downfield. But safe option, 2-quarterback league or anything like that, Mason Rudolph is somebody that you can add. We're going to move on to the beef of this conversation, but in running backs is what I want to get to. I really want to get to the running backs, but I'm going to give you one more, okay? Kyle Allen with the Carolina Panthers. Now, he looked pretty good. There's no guarantee whether or not Cam is starting this week, and there was some dialogue saying that he might have a potential Liz Frank injury that may require surgery, but they're going to try to rehab it to make sure that doesn't happen. I don't know. I mean, if you pick him up and he doesn't play, that's unfortunate, because if Cam ends up starting the game, there's no way that, or he says he's good enough to play, then Kyle Allen's not going to play. But 19 of 26 passes, 261 yards, and 4 touchdowns. I know it's a pretty big stat line. I'm not saying that you should waste a waiver pick on Kyle Allen, but you need to realize who he was playing against. The Arizona Cardinals secondary has been thrashed by multiple teams this year already. It's not out of the question to say that they get thrashed again the following week, and the real test will be if Cam sits this week, and then Kyle Allen can come in and see how he does against the Houston Texans. I mean, it's another pretty good matchup from a defensive standpoint, but I think the Texans end up taking that game. So we'll see. It all depends on if Cam's going to play. The meat and potatoes, what you've been waiting for, or what I've been waiting for. I've got a couple leagues where I need a little bit of running back help. So I'm going in big on these guys. First and foremost, everybody that had the number 1 overall pick is panicking because Saquon Barkley has a high ankle sprain. The real question is, how long is he going to be out? It doesn't really matter. You have a plug-and-play RB1 in Wayne Gallman, okay? Nobody really knows how long Saquon's going to be out. Some said 4 weeks, some said 8 weeks, some said 4 to 8 weeks. But Gallman had a pretty good year in his rookie year in 2017. Carried the ball 111 times for 476 yards and caught 34 receptions on 48 targets for 193 yards and 1 touchdown. So the fact that he can catch the ball makes him more valuable in PPR formats, but there's really nobody else in New York that's going to get an option. So the volume is there. He is the highest priority ad that you have in your league. If you're doing a fab budget and you've got $100 to spend on free agents, this is a $35 to $40 kind of guy. If you're not and you have a number 1 waiver priority, put it in on Gallman, because you're going to at least have 4 weeks of a startable running back. I know that I need him. I have a couple leagues where Austin Eckler is my primary RB2, and Melvin's going to come back and I'm going to be SOL. But if I got a guy like Wayne Gallman chilling on the bench, then you better believe that's who's going in there. So, highest priority ad, Wayne Gallman. Behind him, you got a couple other guys like Darrell Williams, the Kansas City Chiefs, 5% owned on Yahoo. Now, the interesting part about this group is that they've had sort of a committee this year, but the committee's sort of banged up. They ruled out my boy Damian last week. He didn't play. I'm not sure if he's not going to play this week. LaShawn McCoy was in there getting all the work. Everybody thought that Darwin Thompson was going to be the backup guy, but nobody really knows what's going on here. This is an upside guy. I'm talking, lower priority ad, but definitely somebody that could be worth a lot if the injuries fall in the correct order. But, in the third week, he saw 55% of the offensive snaps in the Chiefs' backfield. That's a really good sign because obviously McCoy wasn't at 100%. Damian was ruled out, and the guy that we thought was going to be the plug-and-play in Darwin Thompson was not. So don't follow all the headlines. I know there was a lot of hype around it, but Darrell Williams seems to be the guy. Moving on. New England Patriots, Rex Burkhead. Now, I've got him in a couple of leagues. I picked him up just because I've been a little bit concerned with the usage of Sony Michel, but he is 24% owned on Yahoo, and he kind of fell right into a pretty big workload, right? Like he had 11 carries, 47 yards, and a score. Now, the biggest part is he's been getting some of James White's PPR volume. 6 catches on 7 targets. That's 6 points right off top before he even moves a yard. So if you're a James White owner, if you're somebody that's looking for that extra value in a PPR league, Rex Burkhead is available in 76% of the leagues. Go grab him, scoop him up. Next guy we got, Jamal Williams, Green Bay Packers. And I'm not a huge Jamal Williams fan. Personally, I think that he's way out-talented in that backfield, and I don't like how much Matt LaFleur uses him. That being said, he's still being used a ton. And for whatever reason, he out-touched Aaron Jones at the game that I was at. Rest in peace, Denver Broncos, 2019. But for seriously, 14 touches for Jamal Williams and 11 for Aaron Jones? What is wrong with you, LaFleur? What is wrong with you? I don't know. But he got 86 yards gained towards Aaron Jones' 23. And besides, a couple of goal line carries, it seems like there's a pretty good value here for Jamal Williams, who's only 9% owned on Yahoo. So take a look on your waivers. Look for a couple of these guys. I talked a little bit about Ronald Jones last week. I still am throwing up in my mouth anytime the Tampa Bay Buccaneers backfield is mentioned, but he looked really good week 1, and then he lost a bunch of work to Peyton Barber after that, and I'm not sure what's going to go on here. One of these backs is going to be worth something at some point, and if you haven't picked up Ronald Jones, now would be a decent time to do so. 2 other backs to potentially own. These are guys that I might not burn a waiver wire pick on or a claim on, but you can probably grab them in free agency tomorrow anytime after 3 a.m. Tony Pollard with the Dallas Cowboys. Now, you kind of watched, if you watched the game, you saw that most of Pollard's work came in the last 17 minutes, but he still got 10 carries. And if you're getting 10 carries behind Ezekiel Elliott, were they resting him? I'm not sure exactly what the workload came from, but he scored. He scored a touchdown. He had 10 carries. So, it's a little bit of added insurance if you're a Zeke Elliott owner. I would imagine that there's probably going to be more value for you in Rex Burkhead or Wayne Gallman or Darrell Williams on the waiver than there is to cuff a running back that is going to get a ton of work in Zeke Elliott anyways. But I'm just throwing it out there. Last but not least of the running backs, Alexander Mattison, 20% owned with the Minnesota Vikings, and he's pretty similar to Tony Pollard, right? Like, once the Minnesota Vikings got way up against the Oakland Raiders, it was a blowout. They're like, all right, we're going to rest our star running back, and, here's the scoop. Here you go, buddy. Here's the rock. Run with it. And, he seemed like he had a pretty good day, but for the most part, his only value is going to come from Dalvin Cook getting an injury. So prioritize your waiver usage elsewhere, but if these guys are around, not a bad bench stash for a couple weeks. Wide receivers. DJ Chark I have been talking about for weeks. At this point, you probably don't even want me to talk about him, but he seemed like he's had basically 55 or more yards and a touchdown in every single game. And him and the Sex Pistol, Gardner Minshew, just seem to have this pretty good rapport. If you guys watched that Thursday night game against the Titans, Minshew was threading the needle. If Dede Westbrook hadn't dropped that touchdown, Minshew would have another one on the board. So I'm pretty happy about adding a receiver that has a good rapport with that quarterback, and DJ Chark is that guy. 40% owned still. Even though I've been talking about it for 2 weeks, he's still available in 60% of your leagues. If you need a wide receiver, go grab him. Next guy up. This is a personal favorite of mine. I drafted him in a couple leagues. I picked him up a week or 2 ago in a couple leagues as well, but none other than the Golden Tate. So he gets to return from his 4-game suspension due to his fertility drug mishap. I have no idea what actually happened there, but it's hilarious. And he's only 8% owned on Yahoo. So week 4 is his last week, which means that he returns in week 5, and they play against the Minnesota Vikings. So, with Daniel Jones playing pretty well, he's going to look to the tight end in Evan Ingram, and he's going to look to a slot receiver in short yardage to bail him out of tough situations. Guess who that guy is? You got it, Golden Tate. So pick him up if you need some wide receiver help. He might be drafted in your league. Depends on how savvy your mates are. But either way, a pretty good option. Next up, Philip Dorsett for the New England Patriots. We've all heard about this whole scandal and shenanigans behind Antonio Brown. It's pretty hilarious, actually. But it is what it is. And Philip Dorsett has had a little bit of a flash in the pan the last 2 games. Does that mean that he's done? I'm not sure. But he caught 6 of 7 targets for 53 yards and a score in the Patriots' win over the Jets. And it seems like they're still getting him involved. So he's kind of getting that long ball type game with Edelman handling the slot and then Gordon being the other outside receiver. But he's only 32% owned in Yahoo. If you need a dart throw on a given week, Philip Dorsett's your guy. Now I've got a couple other guys for you to add here. Deontay Johnson with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, if you remember the whole Dante Moncrief hype, I was involved in that. I had such high hopes for him. And then he goes into that first week 1 game against the Patriots and drops 7 of his 10 receptions. Just, straight off his hands. It's not a scenario where it was like threading the needle. He just dropped him. So the good part is there's been a little bit of a rapport building with Mason and himself, and it seems like he's starting to get a bigger target share. So he was targeted 6 times, caught 3 for 52 yards and a touchdown. And, he also led the Steelers in air yards. So I think that this is a decent flyer option. He's not going to be taken in most leagues. He's available in 96% of the leagues on Yahoo. Definitely somebody that I would pick up if you're looking for a deep wide receiver. Next up, James Washington. Now, everybody's talked about the connection that he's had with Mason Rudolph, right? They went to college together, but it doesn't really seem like Washington's had as good of a showing as a potential wide receiver 2 in the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive scheme. So Washington on Sunday, 4 targets, caught 2 for 14 yards. He did have a really, really long pass that was called pass interference. But of course, for fantasy purposes, that is absolutely irrelevant, and we don't care unless it's putting points on our team. So I would say prioritize James Washington, behind Deontay Johnson, just because it seems like he was a bit of a more of a priority of a target for Mason Rudolph, but maybe that college connection will come back to help him at some point. Last but not least of the wide receivers, Cole Beasley, Buffalo Bills. So he hasn't gotten a touchdown yet, and he's always been a PPR volume kind of guy. Now, he caught 8 balls this last week for 48 yards. I don't care if you don't catch a touchdown. If you catch 8 passes in a PPR format and give me 48 yards on top of that, I just got 12.8 points off of Cole Beasley. And guess what? He's going to get there at some point. So it's just a matter of time before he finds the end zone. But this is another one of those deeper sleepers that might be a good option for you. I've got a couple of tight end options for you before we end the video here. But Will Dissly. Now I want you to be aware, before you go and bust out a waiver on Will Dissly, he did this same thing last year. First couple weeks, he caught 1 or 2 touchdowns. He had a good showing, and then he was completely irrelevant for the rest of the season. So I'm not saying that you need to go be a priority ad, get him on your roster, plug and play every single week. Don't do that. But he does have 11 catches on 12 targets for 112 yards and 3 touchdowns in 2 weeks, which is pretty impressive. So it seems like Russell Wilson and Dissly have decent chemistry, but I'd be interested to see what he does in their upcoming matchup. But another guy, a deeper option here, Dawson Knox. He's probably sitting on top of the ads button on your fantasy waiver, but he didn't really do anything in the first 2 weeks, right? He had 2 catches for 19 yards. But when he played against the Bengals, he had a 49-yard catch, 3 catches for 67 yards and a touchdown. I'm not really sure what the Bills are going to do with their tight end spot. They've had a couple of decent tight ends in that spot, and Charles Clay and some others that haven't really been able to be fantasy relevant. And I don't know that Dawson Knox is going to be that guy coming up, but he is a potential option for you. That's all I've got for you guys today. Questions, comments, concerns, drop them down below. I'll try to help you guys out with your rosters this week. We will be dropping the streaming defenses video next. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel for weekly content to help your roster. I appreciate you guys so much for supporting the channel, getting this information out. Hopefully you're doing well in your leagues. And let's go. Let's get it through week 4. Good luck.